안녕하세요. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Teresa Ra, and it's a pleasure to welcome you. I hope you enjoyed the opening ceremony last night. It was my very first Special Olympics opening ceremony, and I was very impressed by the athletes, their joy, their spirit, their perseverance, and their ability to dance Gangnam style.
Joanne Achim입니다. My name is Yang Lan. Good morning, everyone. I come from China. It's my privilege to serve as the MC for today's summit with Teresa, and I'm more proud to be here as a member of a big family, as a global ambassador for such a great course of Special Olympics movement. Good morning.
네, 내외 귀빈 여러분, 지적 장애인의 빈곤과 사회적 소외의 악순환 근절이라는 주제하에 개최되는 제1회 글로벌 개맛 서밋에 오신 것을 환영합니다. 2013년 동계 스페셜 올림픽의 개최지인 아름다운 대한민국 평창에서 여러분들을 만나 뵙게 되어 대단히 기쁘게 생각합니다. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the very first Special Olympics Global Development Summit, ending the cycle of poverty and exclusion for people with intellectual disabilities. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the Republic of Korea and to beautiful Pyeongchang, host of the 2013 World Winter Games. On behalf of Special Olympics, we want to thank our Korean hosts, especially Chairwoman Na of the Games Organizing Committee, Prime Minister Kim Hwang-sik, Governor Choi Moon-soon of Gangwon Province, and the athletes of Special Olympics Korea for hosting their fellow athletes from around the world. For the next 7 days, through competition in 8 winter sports, they will demonstrate not only their talents and abilities, but their grit, determination, camaraderie, and joy. We wish them all the best as they pursue gold. But while we're gathered here in Pyeongchang to cheer on the athletic accomplishments of people with intellectual disabilities, we are also here to chart a new vision for what life is like for them off the field of play. At Special Olympics, people with intellectual disabilities are heralded as champions. But far too often, they are also ignored and denied access to the basic services, rights, and protection that all of us need and deserve. Over the course of today's summit, you're going to hear a lot about the disparities that they face in access to healthcare, employment, jobs, safety, and education. But you also hear about collaborative ideas and commitments to action from friends and partners of Special Olympics who are doing their part to help bring about justice for people with intellectual disabilities. Their actions remind us that together we can build a better future for the 200 million people with intellectual disabilities around the world who are far too often isolated and excluded.
This year, we witnessed the largest Winter Games in the history of Special Olympic movement, welcoming 2,300 athletes from more than 110 countries, from Djibouti and Azerbaijan to Yemen and United Arab Emirates and every nation in between. While the Winter Games may happen only once every 4 years, the heart of Special Olympics movement stays with more than 50,000 local, community-based trainings and competitions that take place every year in the world. With more than 4 million athletes and more than 1 million volunteers around the globe, Special Olympics has grown to become the largest community-based grassroots sporting organization in the world. These games are a true microcosm of that worldwide presence, featuring not only a record number of athletes, but a record number of countries and athletes from developing countries, including delegations from Mongolia, Nepal, Papua New Guinea, Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand, and Pakistan. Their presence at these games represents the dramatic demographic shift that has taken place in the Special Olympics movement over the past decade. What was once a US-based, sports-driven organization has grown into a truly global movement that is focused not only on achieving excellence in sports, but also equity in healthcare, education, housing, and employment. Special Olympics is committed to fostering communities that accept, welcome, and honor our members with intellectual disabilities. And that's why we are here today. Though the core passion of the movement is still about sports, our core responsibility is to promote their dignity, their humanity, and equality.
Special Olympics is comprised of countless dedicated individuals, volunteers, families, coaches, supporters, fans, and most of all, the athletes themselves. But the person I'm about to introduce is truly remarkable. She is a leader in this country, the mother of Yoona Kim, a beautiful and talented Special Olympics athlete, and a visionary on policies for people with disabilities in Korea. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce former National Assembly member and chairwoman of the Games Organizing Committee, Na Kyung-won. Please welcome her to the stage.
Good morning. It's an honor to be surrounded by so many distinguished people. Many of you have traveled so far to be here. Thank you. This is history in the making. I hope you enjoyed the video that showed the intellectually disabled have the same hopes and dreams for a happy life, just like us. It reminded me of a talk I had with my daughter. Yoona is 20 years old and has an intellectual disability. She used to say to me, "Mom, I want to get married one day and take care of my family on my own 2 feet." It was a bittersweet moment. On one hand, I wanted her to find a good husband and get married too. On the other hand, I really worry if she can't find a good husband. Perhaps it's better if I keep her with me forever. But I know she has dreams of her own. Most importantly, is what she wants, not what I want. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the issue we must tackle. Understanding what's best for them from their perspective, not ours. But until now, many of the policies and programs have always been what we think is best. We need to change this attitude. How do we do that? We listen, because listening is the most honest form of respect for another human being. As in the video we just watched, they want equal access to education, equal access to culture, equal access to sports. Yes, earlier and better education means more open doors for employment. Increased opportunities in the workplace means they can escape poverty. They can contribute to the economic health of their communities and no longer be subjected to social exclusion. Where they are born and live also influences their quality of life. Cooperation between nations, developing and developed country, rich and poor, is necessary. We need to share information, learn from each other, lean on each other to raise the bar for their rights wherever they live. Some just dream or wish for a better world. But here at this summit, we have the means to really make it happen. Let's put our heads together and come up with specific plans that we can put into action. Together we can build a solid foundation to create a world where all intellectually disabled people, like the athletes, my daughter, can fully pursue their dreams. Thank you. Now, I'm happy to introduce Loretta Craven, a member of the Special Olympics Board of Directors and Special Olympian. Loretta was part blind when she was born. She could not talk or walk until she was 4. But she didn't let them stop her. Oh no. She went on to become a world-class runner with 26 marathons under her belt. Her personal best will amaze you. 3 hours and 3 minutes. Wow. She also works hard for equal rights for the intellectually disabled. She isn't afraid to confront anyone or anything. Governors, business leaders, young people. Her goal is to make everyone change how they see the potential and talents of the intellectually disabled. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm proud to present fellow Special Olympics board member and my friend, Loretta Craven.
Good morning, everyone. I am very honored to be here because fighting for rights is my passion. Martin Luther King once said, taking the first step is having faith. And when you have faith, you see the staircase at the end. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my life. I was born in the United States, and my mother was a big woman. She had 7 children. Really, she had 9. And when I came, the doctors basically told her she's not going to live. My mother was the kind of person, she was strong, and she had a fire in her heart. And she would say, don't tell me what I'm going to do for my child. Ladies and gentlemen, I was one of those children who was told to go to an institution. But my mother wouldn't have it. I lived being very depressed, very angry. And as time went by, like any other child, I had a dream to be an athlete, to be a doctor, a veterinarian, works with animals, or a nurse. I met a woman through a program called Special Olympics. And this woman also had fire in her heart that burned for a society of people with intellectual disability. Her name was Eunice Kennedy Shriver. And I thought my dreams will be realized. As time went by, this woman didn't know the impact that she would have on the world. She started with her vehicle, like you drive a car, called sport. You ran, you jumped, you swam. And that was it. But what I got out of it was had the opportunity to say for the first time in my life, I belong, I can dream, and I have rights. Later on, this woman didn't know the impact that she would have, not only for people with intellectual disabilities, but for their families. And if you look today, Miss Eunice Kennedy Shriver is in the heavens looking down, seeing the fight and the struggling still going on. People not having the right to education, people not having the right to housing, people not having a right to good food or nutrition. And yes, Mothers are told every day when they have a child with Down syndrome, would you consider to abort this child? People. All we want to be known is by our name. My name is Loretta. Refer me as Loretta, not someone, Loretta first as the second name, Loretta who has an intellectual disability. Loretta's always first. John is always first. Dustin is always first. And when I look around the world today, I still see the disrespect for people with intellectual disabilities around the world. And yes, in the United States of America too. We still get the second education, not first. We still get the least of health care. I remember when my mother took me to a doctor one time with her other 4 daughters, and the dentist checked all my sister's teeth, and the dentist got to me and looked at my mother and says, we don't do those kind. You send her to a clinic. The disparity in health care, the disparity in rights, all around this world is still happening today. Whether it's in Kathmandu, whether it's in the United States, whether it's here in Korea, we have some work to do. And I would like to challenge you to have the fire that Eunice Kennedy Shriver had in her heart, that Rita Claiborne had in her heart, to go and fight. Today, you will learn from many people at this summit. Now, it's your turn to take it home and put it into fire and let that fire burn through somebody else. Until this happens, we'll still go through the problems that we're going through. Not second class, not third class. Our citizens should be first class. And when they are first class, they are educated, they can give back to the community. They can do for others, and they could be a part of this world. My mom always said, it's not how much you have, it's what you have. I might don't have the best of reading. I might won't have the best of smarts, but I have something to give. And I know I have the right to fight for my rights and others like me. So I challenge each and every one of you around the globe here today to get out and fight for people with intellectual disabilities who live amongst you. Yes, we have dreams and hopes, just like everyone else. And now, I would like to introduce you to someone who is very important, His Excellency, Mr. Kim Hong-sik, the Prime Minister of the Republic of Korea. Thank you. Shukran. Spasiba. Kamsahamnida.
Honorable Timothy Shriver, Chairman of the Special Olympics, distinguished guests, and ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Pyeongchang. I'm delighted to greet you at this meaningful occasion of the Special Olympic Global Development Summit, and to His Excellency Joyce Banda, President of Malawi, Honorable Aung San Suu Kyi, Chairwoman of the National League for Democracy of Burma, and Honorable Song Sang-hyun, President of the International Criminal Court, as well as all the distinguished guests gathered here today. Thank you very much for blessing this momentous event with your presence. I would also like to acknowledge all the STEM members of the organizing committee, including Chairman Na Kyung-won, who have worked so hard for the preparation of this day. Distinguished guests, here in Pyeongchang, the excitement and enthusiasm of the Special Olympic World Winter Games is at its height. Over 3,000 intellectually disabled from almost 120 countries around the world are carving out their own epic stories of courage and passion. I cannot but bow my head to their greatness as I witness the athletes, undaunted by their physical limitation, doing their utmost to overcome their disabilities. However, the reality they have to face every day is still very harsh. As you can tell from the theme, ending the cycle of poverty and exclusion for people with intellectual disabilities, the intellectually disabled face multiple challenges of poverty and exclusion. Not only do they have to struggle against their physical challenges, they also have to fight against the social disregard and discrimination. And the prolonged recession of the global economy is inflicting even more intense pain and suffering on their lives. Distinguished guests, while people talk about how we all live as one happy family in the global community, their words ring hollow in the face of the struggle of the people with disabilities. Everyone, whether they be disabled or not, have the right to live with human dignity. We have to work together towards realizing a world where disability does not mean discrimination and where the physically challenged can also enjoy the rights they are entitled to. The Korean government will also do its best to promote the human rights and welfare of the people with disabilities, as well as actively join in their global efforts towards reaching that goal. Distinguished guests, there is a saying that a job well begun is a job well done. So we have high expectations for this summit, which is being held for the first time in the 45-year history of the Special Olympics. It will be a great opportunity for us to look back on the lives and the rights of the people with intellectual disabilities. I sincerely hope that together we can take a great leap forward in creating a friendly world free of poverty and exclusion. Lastly, I wish for the success of the Special Olympic Global Development Summit. And I once again send my welcome and gratitude to all of you who have traveled a long way to Pyeongchang, and hope you have a more fruitful and memorable stay in Korea. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister. It is now my honor to introduce a message of support and solidarity from another globally respected Korean leader. Since becoming Secretary General of the United Nations in 2007, Ban Ki-moon has used his influence to bring greater attention, funding, and action for some of the world's most underserved population, including those with disabilities. Please direct your attention to the screen for a message from the Secretary General of the United Nations, His Excellency Ban Ki-moon.
Madam Na Kyung-won, Chair of the 2013 Pyeongchang Special Olympics World Winter Games Organizing Committee, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to convey my greetings and good wishes to the Special Olympics athletes and the many volunteers, families, spectators, and supporters. With the opening of the 10th Special Olympics World Winter Games, Pyeongchang will showcase the power and spirit of sport to unite people across boundaries and dividing lines. This event is also an important milestone on the road to the 2018 Winter Olympic Games, which will be held in Pyeongchang. The Special Olympics is about inclusion and the promotion of fundamental rights. This is also the essence of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. The United Nations is proud to work with the Special Olympics to promote the Convention and advance empowerment, opportunity, and dignity for all. I welcome the Pyeongchang Declaration, which will highlight the Special Olympics' role in advancing the Millennium Development Goals. And I am also pleased that you will convene a first-of-its-kind Global Development Summit focused on ending the cycle of poverty and exclusion for people with intellectual disabilities. This will focus on the possibilities that the Convention provides in the field of sport and will be helpful as the United Nations prepares for a high-level meeting on the rights of people with disabilities in September. I recently had the honor to address the Rehabilitation International World Congress in Incheon, Republic of Korea. As I said there, when we empower persons with disabilities, we strengthen human solidarity for everyone. Thank you for all you are doing to advance solidarity and opportunity for people with disabilities and our world. I wish you all very successful games.
To Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, who must be very proud that his home country is hosting the Winter Games of the Special Olympics, which stays in the core of the global humanitarian movements. Well, ladies and gentlemen, none of us would be here without the extraordinary commitment of one woman, Eunice Kennedy Shriver. She was a tireless, compassionate, and pioneering advocate for the rights of those with intellectual disabilities. Not only the right to play, but also the right to be a full and included member of our society. Through the eyes of her sister Rosemary, she witnessed the isolation and the prejudice that exists in our societies. No one, not even the family of United States President, was immune to the stigma and prejudice that could come from having a loved one in the family with an intellectual difference. And she was fiercely determined to change that. Her lifelong passion continues through her son, Dr. Tim Shriver, the chairman and CEO of Special Olympics, who tirelessly carries on her work to advance the cause of justice for those with intellectual disabilities. Several months ago, a United States newspaper called Tim, along with Dr. Aung San Suu Kyi, as a peacemaker of 2012, saying that, quote, he's building peace in the hearts of kids and adults alike, one at a time. Athletes have no better fan and champion than Tim Shriver. Now, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our dear friend, Tim Shriver of Special Olympics Movement.
Thank you, Lon, very much. Mr. Prime Minister, distinguished guests, Chairwoman Na, Secretary Vilsack, diplomatic leaders, leaders of government, President Banda, we are here with such tremendous gratitude to you. People think of you as a star in the African sky, so many things on your plate, and you are here with us, and we are so grateful. President Mandela used to say, Amandla, and the response would be, a way to power is to the people. And I think your presence here speaks to the voice of the African people over a generation and over centuries, hoping that the power would, in fact, go to the people, and we're so grateful. Daw Aung San Suu Kyi, I don't think we have words to express our gratitude to you. People all over the world seek you out. They seek your wisdom, your heart, your insight, your courage, your strength, your determination. And yet, you have come such a great distance for our humble movement of people with differences, people with humility, people of gentleness. Of all the places you could be, you have chosen to be here. We will long remember your presence here with deep, deep gratitude. In our time, I would think we could all agree that no value better captures the hopes and dreams of the people of this planet than the value of equality. The United Nations, as the Secretary General has just said, spoke of equality even at its birth, and more recently in its recent conventions. Great nations have been founded on the ideal of equality. The United States, France, Great Britain, and so many hundreds of others, India, South Africa, constitutions declaring that all human beings are created equal. But we gather today with a hint of sadness as we think of all of those declarations, because we know that we stand here side by side with many, many millions of people for whom those declarations have been unheard, to whom they have been unspoken, and for whom they have meant almost nothing. And so we must ask ourselves, do we really believe? Have we come here to repeat words that have been spoken before? Or have we come here because something has stirred within us a new understanding about how far we are really willing to go for the idea, for the sacredness, for the equality of all human beings? As leaders of government, as leaders of non-governmental organizations and businesses, we know we have not gone far enough, and this is not an issue restricted to countries that are considered developing. We use many words in gatherings like this. As Loretta reminded us, certain words are more important than others. Nations, not poor nations or wealthy nations, but nations around the world have struggled with the idea of extending the promise of equality to people with intellectual differences the world over. We have heard the terrible words repeated over and over again. We have seen Florence Nabayinda from Uganda stand in front of a room and say, I was complete trash. We've heard Frank Stevens from the United States, a man with Down syndrome, stand in front of the United States Congress and talk about his lifetime of rejection, and yet stand and say, my life is worth living. We have heard mothers talk to their doctors of the rejection and pain of the absolute discrimination they have faced as their children, as Loretta just said a few moments ago, have been rejected. It all came home, I think, to many of us just a year and a half ago when we saw a picture of Aaron, a 9-year-old boy living in sub-Saharan Africa. He was found by one of our community volunteers on a leash, tied up like an animal. Through no fault of his own, no fault of his mother's, there was nothing for him. The word, the expression that we were taught, he was a tide. His name was not Aaron, his name was Tide. His mother never heard the founding documents of the United Nations. His mother never heard of the UN Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities. His mother never heard of the various declarations of great and mighty gatherings like this. His mother heard nothing on behalf of her son. And so she, for 7 years, woke up every morning to place a leash around his wrist and hold him in restraint And when we sent this picture to so many of our leaders, they answered simply, "Why do you send us this? We see this every day." No pencil to sharpen to take to school, no backpack to fill with a little lunch, no game to play a football with his brothers or sisters, no mother who could stand in front of a gathering like so many of us and say, "I'm proud of my son," the simple gifts. She instead heard, I'm sure, one of these long litany of words that we have heard repeated over and over again, told to mothers and fathers, "Your son is a cabbage, your daughter is a curse, your child is a defect, a retard, a possessed, an invalid, hopeless." Those words echoed in the ears of my own grandmother, 9 children. And when the report card came home from school one year about her daughter, Rosemary, she was told, "Your daughter is retarded." And she wrote in her diary that night that she was heartbroken. And so her daughter, like her sons, was taught from a very early age the power of caring for their brother or their sister. She inspired, as Lon has said, in my own mother, a determination to fight her whole life, to fight the institutions that still today, as we sit here, brazenly abuse people with intellectual disabilities, fight the indifference of political leaders who callously disregard their needs as though they were second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth tier citizens, to fight the arrogance of the medical profession that over generations has so often sentenced people with intellectual disabilities to a fourth or a fifth class life. She was a revolutionary like her brothers because she felt at some very, very simple level a love of her sister and a determination that her sister would not be forgotten by her. Our challenge today is not to repeat or to list the mistakes of history, but it is to correct them. If we leave here at the end of this day and return to the slopes and to the skating rink to cheer and make no difference, this has been a failure. Our challenge today is to imagine a new vision of equality, because make no mistake, the equality challenge of people with intellectual differences is not the same as that of other groups. We are not here to argue that everyone is the same. We are here to argue, as Na has said and as Loretta has said already, that everyone may have the same dreams. Everyone may have the same hopes, but we are not the same. We are different. It is rooted in strength, this challenge, but it is also equally rooted in gentleness. It is powered by the hope of unleashing hidden abilities, but it is also powered by the desire to accept all of our hidden weaknesses. It is a different challenge of equality. These are big ideals, and we are a small gathering. We may be powerful, but we still are small. Make no mistake, this is not a big movement. Our organization, as just one organization, operates in country after country alone. There are almost no organizations supporting the growth and development of people with intellectual challenges. We recognize, as Aung San Suu Kyi said many years ago, that it is not often power that corrupts the ability of our people to have a full and meaningful life. It is fear. Fear of difference, fear of vulnerability, fear of gentleness, fear of the uninhibited willingness to connect and enjoy, despite all the humility of the human experience, and be open. It is fear that we must overcome, and we must, if we are true to this summit, be a fearless team. Let's be specific. The Millennium Development Goals will be rewritten, and new ones will be published. If we cannot ensure that those new goals focus on the specific needs of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, it is our belief that they will establish broad goals but never reach the most vulnerable, big ideals but never reach the hardest to reach. We hope and we are determined to work with all of you as partners to ensure that future declarations that come from the United Nations will make specific mention of the hardest to reach populations and specific targeted ways of reaching them. We have big ideas. Equality. As Loretta said, equal access to health care. Is it a shocking? Is it a far-reaching? Is it an idealistic goal? It is our goal. Equal access to schooling, equal access to sport and recreation and participation. Nothing less will do. So, ladies and gentlemen, the Special Olympics movement welcomes you. We welcome you with humility and with pride. We are a movement of activists. We are not really that good at discussion. People often say to us, you need to get better at how you present yourselves to big and important people. So we're working on that. But what we're really good at is getting things done on the ground. And so we challenge you here. Many of you are really good at proclamations and really good at framing these ideas to the big audiences. We need your help. We have the one thing money can't buy. Most of our programs are poor. Over a third of our countries operate with no cash whatsoever. None. 100% volunteers. 4 million athletes led by 99% citizen activists who are not paid. But we have that one thing that money can't buy. We believe. Loretta spoke at the beginning of faith. We believe. The word comes from the German belieben, to be in love. We have a love of the human spirit. We invite people to unlock their hearts, their love of the human spirit. We invite people to exercise that part of themselves that says, I too can aspire to be a part of the human experience in a way that unleashes the best in all of us. So we ask you, humbly, but very, very determinedly, to join our dignity revolution. Open your minds and unleash your hearts. Believe in these athletes, believe in their 200+ million brothers and sisters around the world. Some revolutions are known for their marches, some for their protests, some for their weapons, many for their strikes, people who have suffered great adversity through other revolutions. Our revolution uses play. It is a different revolution, play, the most fundamental exercise of the human imagination. A mother and a child, first in the beginning, being willing to play with one another, to imagine their hearts opened, connected, attached, and focused on love. We play with great seriousness. We ask you all to join us and play together for a different future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shriver, for those inspiring remarks. I'd now like to bring up to the stage Mr. Muhtar Kent, Chairman and CEO of the Coca-Cola Company, and also Ms. Neha Naik, Special Olympics Bharat athlete and Sergeant Shriver, International Global Messenger. Ms. Naik? Yes.
Hello friends, I am Neha Naik. At first, I was studying in a normal school. Then I had to go to a special school because I was unable to cope. My parents were not happy. They were hiding it from everyone. But when I took part in Special Olympics, they began accepting me and it made them very happy. I have participated in athletics and won many medals. Special Olympics has made me independent and confident. After I began participating in Special Olympics, people around me began to accept me, respect me, and they encouraged me too. I felt very important whenever I won medals. It made me very happy to know that I was a good athlete. I knew that I was able to compete with other athletes. My parents were very proud of me and began telling friends and relatives about my success. Later on, I did athlete leadership program training. and I was happy to evaluate the Cricket Cup tournament held in Mumbai, India in 2006. I was glad to know that I was empowered to make changes in this tournament. And I was taken seriously. This encouraged me to do better in all other activities. Then, I was chosen as an international global messenger, and my family was so proud of me that they began telling friends and relatives and everyone about me and about Special Olympics. I felt they were including me in their lives. As an international global messenger, I have had the opportunity to travel to Morocco, Washington, D.C., Greece, Singapore, and now here I am in Korea. This has helped me make many friends who are excited about my work and who are interested in knowing more about me and Special Olympics. Special Olympics has helped me to grow as an individual and has given me a sense of human dignity. Now, it is my turn as an international global messenger to help Special Olympics to grow. And I am spreading the message of Special Olympics to everyone I meet. Friends, it is my pleasure to introduce Special Olympics board member and chairman and CEO of the Coca-Cola Company, Muthar Kent.
Thank you. Thank you, Neha. And we're so proud of you and also all of the Special Olympics International Global Ambassadors. Thank you again. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, athletes, fans, greetings. I bring you greetings humbly from the 700,000 men and women of the Coca-Cola system worldwide. I'm so proud to be here, humbly standing here in Korea at this very special summit. I'm deeply honored. I could have been anywhere in the world. Coca-Cola does business in 207 countries, but I chose to be here because of the commitments that we have had with Special Olympics ever since that first day back in 1968 when Eunice Kennedy Shriver founded Special Olympics. That was a historic moment, a movement that began with the vision and also action of a selfless leader, inspired by love to stand up and do something for her fellow human beings. Eunice Kennedy Shriver gave voice to the largely silent. She gave inspiration to the downtrodden, hope and purpose, and also rich experiences to men and women others chose to overlook. Or worse, others chose to look down upon. This morning, here, the spark of that original idea has become a benevolent wildfire of love, of respect, of competition, of camaraderie that has brightened the lives of countless people from every continent. And indeed, her brave and beautiful vision is unfolding once again before our eyes. This morning, I'm here to introduce another historic hero, one who is fiercely active, engaged in her singular quest for dignity, for freedom, and a better future for her people, the people of Burma. It is not often that an individual comes along who's able to actually literally change the course of history by standing up and refusing to back down and holding fast the path of nonviolence. But every now and then, a leader of such stature actually does come along, like Gandhi, like Dr. Martin Luther King, like Nelson Mandela, like our dear friend Eunice Kennedy Shriver, and of course, like Daw Aung San Suu Kyi. All of them willing to endure great personal sacrifice, all of them willing to push dignity and freedom. All around the world, the rest of us are immeasurably better off as a result of that work all those people do. On a personal level, for me, one of the highlights for me this past 12 months was helping to bring Coca-Cola back to Burma after a nearly 60-year absence. That was a time when I had the great honor to be with Aung San Suu Kyi. It was an exciting moment for me, my colleagues all around the world. And yet, I was even more excited for the people of Burma to experience those many, many positive changes made possible by this remarkable human rights activist and leader of democracy. Like all of you and countless people the world over, my colleagues and I have been moved, inspired by our dedication to creating a better future and a brighter future for the people of that great nation, Burma. And while this journey, in many ways, this exciting journey in many ways, has just started, it is without question in very strong and very capable, compassionate hands. So, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me and Neha great, great pleasure in welcoming a great leader and humanitarian, the chairperson of the General Secretary of the National League for Democracy for Burma, Daw Aung San Suu Kyi. Please join me in welcoming her.
Dr. Shriver described this movement as a humble one. I should say it's a humbling one. If I had heard all that I've heard this morning, I would have changed my whole speech. But I had to submit it in advance for translation, so I'd better stick to the text. But I would like to say that I do feel that I'm qualified to be here, because after all, what we are fighting in Burma is also disablement, social and political disablement. We're trying to emerge from a state of social and political disablement, so I feel that I do have a place at this gathering. A small place, but one that I regard with great respect and with great pride. It gives me great pleasure to join you today. This is all very formal, but as I said, it was in the prepared text. At this unprecedented Global Development Summit, which brings together leaders from various sectors to examine the needs of people with intellectual disabilities throughout the developing world. Before I start, I must thank Chairman Na Kyung Won, President of the Organizing Committee of the Special Olympics World Winter Games, and Dr. Timothy Shriver, Chairman and CEO of the Special Olympics, for inviting me to give this address. I thank all of you for being here and for giving me such a warm welcome. The stated mission of the Special Olympics is as follows: to provide year-round sports training and athletic competition in a variety of Olympic-type sports for children and adults with intellectual disabilities, giving them continuing opportunities to develop physical fitness, demonstrate courage, experience joy, and participate in a sharing of gifts, skills, and friendship with their families, other Special Olympic athletes, and the community. For the past 45 years, you have carried out the mission with vision and success. You have used sport as a medium to bring together people with intellectual disabilities from all corners of the globe. Around 4 million athletes from more than 170 countries have joined a community where they can find joy, confidence, success, and fulfillment. I'm very happy that the Special Olympics has a presence in Burma with over 2,300 registered athletes. I thank you for the commitment you have shown to our country. We have lived through decades of isolation, but you did not forget us. In recent years, we have live through globalization, the rapid development of technology, and the growth of the world economy. Despite these significant changes, people with intellectual disabilities remain too often marginalized, isolated, and neglected. The Global Development Summit brings together more than 300 of the world's leaders from various different sectors to pursue the following goals. 1, to strengthen inclusive development strategies that will bring increased support and advocacy to those who most in need. 2, to promote human rights. And 3, to establish a renewed global commitment to people with intellectual disabilities. These goals are truly commendable. A new global effort is certainly required, and collaboration between supporters of the summit and partners such as UNICEF, the Peace Corps, Lions Club International, FIFA, and others would help us to address the urgent needs. I understand that in the past decade, the Special Olympics movement has undergone a significant demographic shift, with around 80% of athletes now coming from the developing world. It is important that the summit develops a plan of action for people everywhere. This leads me to the subject matter of my address to you. From shadows to significance, achieving human rights for people with intellectual disabilities. It is estimated that about 200 million people with intellectual disabilities there are about 200 million people with intellectual disabilities across the globe. Although they are a minority, they are a significant minority, comprising approximately 3% of the world's population. Despite this, all too often, they are denied the human rights to which they are entitled. They are more likely than others to live in poverty and to have poor health. They are more likely to be excluded from education, unemployment, and health care. Often, they are unable to participate in society and are deprived of resources and recognition. Following my years under house arrest, I understand all too well how it feels to be isolated, to be removed from society, and to be parted from those one loves. However, at least I had a radio to link me to the outside world. I had books to read, and I knew that there were people rooting for me. Importantly, I had hope that one day things would change for the better. For too many people with intellectual disabilities, they are denied even such hope. I drew strength from my favorite passages in the preamble to the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights. Disregard and contempt for human rights have resulted in barbarous acts which have outraged the conscience of mankind, and the advent of a world in which human beings shall enjoy freedom of speech and belief and freedom from fear and want has been proclaimed as the highest aspirations of the common people. It is essential, if man is not to be compelled to have recourse as a last resort to rebellion against tyranny and oppression, that human rights should be protected by the rule of law. I continue to draw strength from these passages. Human rights are the birthright of all, and we must ensure that people with intellectual disabilities are allowed to enjoy their rights. I would like to paraphrase the comments of a mother of children with intellectual disabilities. The lives of children with intellectual disability are like boats without an oar. They are not able to propel or steer themselves. They can only float along the stream or flow with the tide. If they are faced with large waves, they can't help but sink. Only if they are tied to other boats with oars can they be steered to shore. This seems to me to capture the situation. It is crucial that we help these boats to gain traction and find direction. Burma is perhaps a microcosm of the developing world as a whole when it comes to treatment of people with intellectual disabilities. The picture I have to paint is not a pretty one, but we need to confront reality in order to address it. In Burma, there is a lack of education regarding disability. Actually, there's a lack of education altogether. There is also a widely held superstitious belief that any kind of disability is a punishment for bad deeds in a previous life. As a result, people with intellectual disability are neglected, viewed as abnormal, and looked down upon. Many become lonely and suffer from depression. They are ostracized from their communities, with few, if any, people trying to help them. Although some community members will acknowledge them, often this is confined to looks and expressions of pity. Bullying, name-calling, and finding a disabled person amusing are commonplace. Parents will tend to view a disabled child as a burden, and some will go so far as to abandon the child. After years of neglect, Burma has some of the poorest healthcare systems in the world. In 2008, the military government spent less than $1 per person on health, and Burma ranked among the worst performing countries in nearly every category of healthcare funding. Although the current Burmese government has quadrupled the health budget, it is important to retain perspective and to understand the low base from which we were coming. There are very few specialized healthcare facilities in Burma for people with intellectual disabilities, and there is a shortage of experts who can offer them the care they need. Although the previous military government enacted a child disabilities law and signed the Convention on the Rights of the Child, it failed to implement these effectively. Disabled people were not given access to any special care or assistance from the state. The military government effectively ignored the disabled population and refusing to take responsibility for it. This left parents with the sole responsibility for their disabled children's education, health care, and general well-being. Therefore, a disabled person's quality of life very much depends on the family into which he or she was born. If they are wealthy, a disabled person may live a satisfactory existence in the family if the family can provide accommodation, food, and medical treatment. But for those who are not wealthy, terrible problems arise. And even those who are wealthy don't always know how to cope with intellectual disabilities and can be embarrassed about having such children. Employment prospects of people with intellectual disabilities are very low. According to a national disability survey, more than 86% of people with disabilities in Burma are unemployed. The government labor department does not provide any job opportunities for disabled people. If they're lucky enough to gain private employment, the job is likely to be poorly remunerated. Many are forced into begging on the streets, where there is a heightened risk as regards disease and personal safety. Deprived of health care, education, and employment opportunities, there is no way that people with intellectual disabilities in Burma can improve their living conditions and be lifted out of poverty. However, there are some positive anecdotes which can give us hope and show us the way. A disabled student who initially attended a government state school in Burma was accused by the teachers of misbehaving, stealing a classmate's property, and fighting. The teachers eventually forced him to leave. His parents then had him sent to a special school, private school, where he was transformed. He became very keen to study and exhibited excellent behavior. His teacher there was quoted as saying, "We ensured he received enough attention to understand what was going on. We encouraged other students not to isolate him. Even though we don't have special schools for disabled children, we welcome all students and treat them equally. We also promote funding to parents, provide funding for parents of disabled children who cannot afford to pay. We would like all children to access educational opportunities. And I would like to repeat, all children, not just those who are intellectually disabled. As I said earlier, we are socially and politically disabled in Burma, which means that not all of our children, all of our even not disabled intellectually children have access to education. This type of attitude is essential in fostering a healthy environment for people with intellectual disabilities. In Burma, we are moving from a military dictatorship towards democracy. I'm on the record as indicating that this is a time for cautious optimism. I think cautious is what I'm trying to say. At the moment, we have a military-backed civilian government. That is to say, this government was elected in the 2010 elections in accordance with a constitution that was drawn up by the military government. I won't go into this now because I'm not talking about politics, although it's very difficult to keep it out of my conversation. But if you study the constitution of Burma carefully, you will understand why I refer to our government as a military-backed civilian one. We will have to take a long and difficult path to full democracy and proper respect for human rights, but I'd like to make that path as short as possible with everybody's help. However, we have made some progress. The ratification of the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities in late 2011 was a breakthrough. The right to equal recognition enshrined in Article 12 of the CRPD entitles people with intellectual disabilities to equal health, education, and employment opportunities. Of course, ratifying a convention is one thing, and complying with both its letter and its spirit is another. However, if Burma, until recently one of the most isolated and oppressed countries in the world, can start to acknowledge the rights of people with intellectual disabilities, every developing country should be capable of doing the same, if not more. Imposing assistance on people with intellectual disabilities is not the correct approach. It is they who really know their own needs and who are best placed to shape their own futures. They should be given the opportunity to participate in decision-making and to be active in their communities. As Doryu Yusui, Assistant Director of the Department of Social Welfare in Burma, rightly stated, people with disabilities want opportunity, not charity. Although I have to make an exception in one way, that previously, originally, charity meant love. And I think they need love as well as opportunity. So charity as love, all of us needs. But charity as handouts is something else altogether. They should be included at all levels. Getting to participate is an important step on the road to enjoying all human rights. The former president of the World Bank, James Wolfenson, has stated, unless disabled people are brought into the development mainstream, it will be impossible to cut poverty in half by 2015 or to give every girl and boy the chance to achieve a primary education by the same date. I agree wholeheartedly with that comment. In order to achieve our poverty reduction goals, we must include people with intellectual disabilities in the mainstream. The cost of excluding such people is massive. I'm certain that Burma's gross domestic product will be much higher if people with disabilities are properly included in the workforce. During my Nobel lecture in June 2012, I mentioned that when I met Burmese migrant workers and refugees on my visit to Thailand, many cried out, "Don't forget us." To be forgotten is to die a little. It is to lose some of the links that anchor us to the rest of humanity. People with intellectual disabilities have been living in the shadows, but they are not forgotten. We are here today to convey that message, to examine their urgent needs and to address those needs. Together, we can create solutions to end the cycle of poverty and exclusion. We must be inclusive. We must encourage participation, and we must empower. As I said earlier, this has been a humbling experience for me, listening to people like Loretta and Neha, who have struggled with their own disabilities, and like Chairwoman Na, who has stood up for her own intellectually disabled daughter. I find that my life is really not that difficult at all. It is very humbling to be described as someone who has made great sacrifices. I've never thought I had to make sacrifices. I always thought that I made my own choices. And this is what many intellectually disabled people are denied. They are denied the right to make their own choices. And we must restore that right to them. They must be allowed the right to make their own choices. More choices must be open to them. Many choices were open to me. I chose to do what I'm doing, and I do it because I believe in it, and because I also have my dreams like everybody else. So if we are to help our intellectually disabled brothers and sisters, sons and daughters, to realize their dreams, we must try to broaden the choices that are open to them. Yesterday, I said to Dr. Shriver, we say, together we can. But as I watched what was going on in front of me, I felt, if they can, we can too. If they can overcome their disabilities, we in Burma can overcome the social and political disabilities with which we have been encumbered for the past few decades. And as I struggle to free our people from their particular disabilities, I hope I will be able to do as much as possible to help other people with different disabilities, but disabilities all the same, that we can prove that together we can. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aung San Suu Kyi, for your words. I think your presence here alone has inspired so many and also brought greater attention to the summit. When the concept of the summit was originally conceived by Tim Shriver and Chairwoman Na, they never imagined the enormous interest and response that it would generate. Yet, here we are, with world leaders from government, business, civil society, human rights, with people and organizations who have come a long way to be here today. But as we want to share our message with the world, as Mr. Shriver said, not just among those who are gathered here, a few members of the summit will leave us for a brief bit to address the assembled media in the auditorium nearby. But first, we'll be asking a few members of our audience, including members of the Korean government who have so generously sponsored this event, to join us on stage for a commemorative photo. So when you arrived at your seat, there were instructions asking you to join in the group photo. We'd like to ask you now.